That transitioned out faster than I meant it to. Welcome, everybody, to a very, very special episode of HOSTility. It is May 2nd, 2023. It's only been 2 days, but every day I'm still shocked it's May. It feels like this year has gone by so fast. I am joined today by an author and a person who I have been following around stealthily on the internet for a couple of years now, and have always been very, very interested in her content, in her writings and everything, and basically just went, I want to share this person with our audience. So welcome, everybody. Please welcome, everyone, our wonderful guest today, Erin Lewis. Erin, how are you?
Good. How are you?
It's been a day. It's been a May 2nd, for sure. Yeah. Time has become just utterly meaningless. Let's start by introducing you to our audience here. I know there will be some people who are wondering what types of calls we are taking. And to tell you the truth, you're going to hear about Erin's books and the things that excites Erin to talk about, certainly any of those topics. And then generally we still will broadly take calls about theism, skepticism, and the like on these episodes. But Erin, why don't you start by sharing a little bit about you and your books and what people will find when they look for you?
Well, I have 6 books to date. My newest one is called South of Heaven. It's actually my first full-length work of fiction. So my first fiction novel, actually kind of a little kid dream of mine. I grew up always wanting to be a writer. I had, I guess I was a bit of a nerd in school. I didn't have a lot of friends. And so, I buried my face basically in a bunch of books. And so writing was something I always wanted to do. I got into activism and kind of ended up online and all this crazy stuff. After I had started to kind of question my beliefs and let them go, I started stealthily following people, mostly with atheists in their screen names online. And one of the organizations I followed was the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is, if you don't know, all about the separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And it turns out I ended up needing their help with an issue I was having with my son's school. There was a church event that the school was promoting, but of course, speaking of stealth, the church didn't actually say that they were a church. They just sent home this flyer. Everybody want a free bike. Anyway, FFRF got involved. They helped me out. I ended up getting involved with FFRF, and at that point, I had written my first book called Dirty Money, which is about my life as a stripper. Basically, my whole goal was really to just sort of change the narrative and maybe tell my story. I hadn't seen a lot of other stories like me. It's always that sad, drug addicted, my boyfriend smokes pot and beats me and plays guitar kind of a thing. And I just really wanted to fight back about that kind of stuff. One of the organizations in town was actually a religious group. A girl that I knew had worked with, she started an outreach group. And when I looked at her own story, it was, not true.
Yeah.
Or at least she made a lot of excuses for her behavior. And then all of them, of course, involved a great plan in Jesus and stuff. So I was partly motivated by religion and that kind of a thing. And I just really wanted to tell my own story. I didn't really think that it would ever go anywhere. And then I got involved with FFRF. My local chapter president helped me collaborate on my third book called Expose Yourself, which is about humanism, critical thinking, definitely atheism, but I use a lot of anecdotes and I make tons of, sex jokes, because what do you do when you're a stripper and a writer? You joke about it. And so that was basically my next book. And then I ended up collaborating with another author on a crime fiction novel called Stripper Noir, which has nothing to do with atheism. It is a secular crime story, at least. So there's nothing supernatural in it. And then South of Heaven, my latest book, it's really one big dig on the idea of heaven, qualifications to get into heaven. Everybody talks about, Pascal's wager,
Yeah.
at the end of your life, or, maybe you just believe, or you say you believe just to kind of hedge your bets. So my character does that, and then she gets to heaven, and she finds out that all you really have to do is repent, which means you're kind of in heaven with a bunch of shitheads. And it goes on from there. She decides heaven sort of sucks and spends the rest of the time trying to get out, basically trying to get to hell,
where the good parties are.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
There's something interesting about. So as far as within the atheist community, within the skeptic community, what even the atheist community is sort of up for interpretation as well. And I'm curious about how, like, I'm a queer man, and when I came out as queer into an atheist community, there's no stigmas left there. Like, yes, of course, you meet the occasional homophobic atheist, but they're pretty rare and fewer and far between. However, I've noticed, or I think I've noticed, that stigmas, especially stigmas directed toward women, don't tend to go away. So I'm curious what the as an adult sex worker or an adult whichever phrase you like, whichever one you'd like me to use, I'll use. What the experience was. Is there a larger? Is sex work less stigmatized amongst atheists as much as it should be compared to other things?
I would say, relatively speaking, it is. However, actually, in the next issue of Free Inquiry, which is one of Center for Inquiry's magazines, I have an article about sexual purity culture, which actually sort of tells that story. I know we had discussed earlier, I wasn't raised with a lot of like purity culture ideas. Now my siblings they're a lot farther apart than I am. I think I'm 9 to 14 years younger than the rest of my siblings, who are all raised pretty strict Catholic. By the time I came around, I was pretty much baptized, and then they like gave up. And my mother had deconstructed a lot of her weird things about sex when she was divorced. I mean, she really didn't have much of a choice. Thankfully, she took the healthy route. So I wasn't really exposed to a lot of that sex shaming, that kind of a thing. There just wasn't a lot of that for me. When I really became aware of even what sexual or like what purity culture was actually when I entered the atheist community and learning other people's stories and how they dealt with it and that kind of stuff. And I do think that there's a certain amount of carryover that happens.
Yeah.
I and my layman's opinion would be that I think a lot of the sex shaming stuff, the embarrassment, just really kind of some of those icky feelings, I think those are probably some of the last things to get deconstructed, that people really get rid of. However, definitely online, I've had experiences with secular people that surprisingly, a lot of times men that find the fact that I'm not ashamed of having been a stripper, that just seems to piss them off, like
it's supposed to, right?
Or I get a lot of, oh, hey girl, you did what you had to do, good job. You did it. And it's like, I did what I wanted to do. And I find it really insulting when I tell somebody that I actually liked my job and I chose my job, and they tell me, oh, well, no, you didn't. Right. You must have just really been in a bad place. And it's like, okay. Yeah. So it really sucks when people say, like you're just mad at God, or, you're an atheist, but you believe in Satan. You know what I'm saying? So basically you're telling somebody how you feel, what your beliefs are, what your positions are. And they're saying, yeah, but not really.
Right. But they never abide that if you try to return it. I've noticed the type of people who are always insistent of, I can tell you what you actually believe. I can tell you what your actual motivations were. The moment you try to return that, they usually get shouty. They usually start yelling.
There's actually, and I think it came from Albania, there's actually a whole academic paper on Expose Yourself and how I'm basically just internalizing my oppression and the patriarchy and my anger at God and all this stuff. It's literally a whole published paper. Wow. It's a PDF. I saved it. Otherwise, I wish I could I really wanted to shout it from the world, because it was oh my God, this is what I'm screaming about.
Yeah.
I think that in the difference, particularly with sex work, and I I absolutely fought against being called a sex worker for a while because I never actually had sex. I mean, I definitely worked in the sex industry, but for me, like just being a stripper, like that boundary is part of what kept me safe. And so I was really resistant to being called a sex worker, although technically that's what strippers are. So
Yeah.
I will accept the label.
Yeah.
But I think that the stigmas that are around that, whether it be the secular or mainstream type community, even religious community, I think, or even the squishy, karma believers or higher power believers, I think the stigma around any kind of sex work is really strong. And, the secular community, atheist community is not immune to that.
Yeah, I agree.
Even if they weren't raised religiously, I think that there's still a lot of stigmas and particularly stereotypes.
Yeah.
Drug use is actually one of my biggest ones. I think one of my first comments was, and I'm still friends with this person. I actually totally adore them. But one of the first things somebody said to me when they met me and found out what I did was, "Oh, what kind of drugs were you addicted to?" Like right out the gate. I was like, "Oh, okay.
None.
This nice little person, and I know that they're meaning well, but I'm like super offended."
Yeah, I mean, it sort of hits from two different angles. One, the assumption that to be a stripper, you must have been addicted to some drugs. And two, that if somebody is a stripper and has any sort of drug addiction, whether it's bad or good, that these are inherently related also. Even if you had some drugs in your life, that it must be. And we're just looking for all the things to check off of like, well, my parents do this and have been doing this with members of our family, where anytime somebody is struggling, that's a part of the family's out group, not in their little circle of cult mediocrity. They start creating this image of like, well, she gets blackout drunk and then has sex, but then tries to say she didn't consent to the sex, which is, you said this is a recent thing. You said she got blackout drunk and then somebody had sex with her. That isn't consenting, you idiot. Anyway, this is a weird thing that happens where those stigmas and those shitty attitudes, because we've until recently lived in an almost entirely religious country, and now it's starting to become, the nuns are starting, the NONEs are starting to grow massively in numbers. There's still like those purity cultures and the purity culture and the stigmas that are coming from religion that have seeped their way into the rest of society in ways that they didn't really address is from those parts. And so, like you mentioned, how it's one of the last things to go. I think that's true. I think there are some things we deconstruct out loud and we deconstruct with other people. And we're like, oh my goodness, my fear of hell and all of this stuff. We don't mind talking about those things. But because sex is so stigmatized, there's a point where you talk about some stuff of it, especially clearing the things that you want, the ways you want to feel liberated. And then it's almost like once you get up to your line of liberation, anything beyond there, it still takes you a long time to actually deconstruct the way you feel like people should be ashamed for going past that line, if you do at all, because it just happens internally. And so I've noticed, for example, like concepts of sluttiness still somehow exist in the secular community. And that's a weird one to still exist. Yeah.
Honestly, it makes people uncomfortable. That's really just the bottom line is, and I think sex in particular is also, it can be pretty embarrassing. You're talking about bodily functions. You're talking about, how you feel about yourself. Your sexuality is a huge, huge part of your identity for most people. And, there's a lot of sticking points. I know one of the reasons that I, really liked being a dancer was because when I was a little kid, I was teased for how I looked. I'm small and freckled and, I had a smart mouth and I didn't look like the rest of my friends. So, not only was I not cute, I was probably pretty irritating also. And so I grew up really feeling ugly and not attractive, which of course was reinforced by bullies because that's the easiest way to make fun of somebody. And so when I started dancing, it was really empowering. It was really liberating. It was easy for me to come into myself and really kind of, finally feel okay in my own skin. And while, of course, that is not what I would recommend for, the average person to go do, because, as much as I talk about my own experiences as a dancer, it's not something I would necessarily recommend to other people because there are a lot of pitfalls. But I think that a lot of that shame and some of that holdover does come to do with that sense of self, that sense of identity, that sense of, feeling attractive, wanting to feel, sexy and all tied up into that. And so I think that makes people uncomfortable sometimes when you're looking at somebody who's, who's comfortable with it or who's kind of throwing it out there. And, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's pretty much my shtick when I started writing books. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a college degree. Actually, I do have a degree in baking and pastry arts, but I don't. That's kind of my jam is sex and blasphemy.
Yeah, that's a good jam though. Sex and blasphemy. That's a solid jam. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's definitely a lot of the shame that surrounds, because it feels like such a private thing, whether or not we should be speaking about everything so privately. There's a few things that are like this, but obviously this permeates into like society's also very afraid to talk about that we all poop, but there's no commandments against pooping in the Bible, so there's not the shame
there's a whole
stuff.
book about it.
Yeah,
we almost got it for our kid.
There's a lot of them now. There's a ton.
Is there?
There's lots of trying to destigmatize pooping. And because this society sucks, we'll probably accomplish that before we destigmatize sex work or just sexuality. I also think some level of what happens in there's a frustrating trend you notice from people who leave very fundamentalist religion tend to go down a pretty hefty libertarian route. And then you also start to see, like, I'm talking like the big L libertarians who also then cross over into like incel and MGTOW communities. And there's this very dark secular group that for some reason, I'm an ex-Mormon. I've seen a lot of other ex-Mormons go down that path. You see a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses go down that path. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of that stuff sort of driving this almost attempt at a secular argument against sluttiness that I think is sourced mostly in almost a type of jealousy of I hate that I don't feel as sexually liberated, or I don't have the access to the amount of sex that I want to be having, and I perceive somebody else as having the access to that and being more sexually liberated than me. And I think that there's a deep resentment, and that's the thing that is hard to get the atheist community in mass to, especially because the loud parts of the atheist community are a lot of men. Like it's still the case. It's still the case now. Like it's as far, and look, this channel's no exception. There's more male hosts than there are anyone else. So it's a community that's already oversaturated with men. And so finding men in this community who are ready to help you also shit on the women that you wish you could be fucking but can't, I think is honestly driving a lot of it. And it's really sad. It's really fucking, really sad.
I think I'm fortunate that I've only run into a couple of them. I have a troll who's definitely an atheist. And he's not only my troll, I share him with several others. But he makes up different accounts and whatever. And that is very obviously his thing. And what I find really striking about it is that in his posts, in his attacks, he's very much like he has such an utter lack of self-awareness as to the information of what he's putting out there. Like every comment, every attack, point he thinks he's making really just illuminates his own emotional damage and what's actually going on in his head. And he was, in my opinion, he seems somebody who's hurt very badly. So he claims now to be asexual or whatever. He's very obviously not. He only attacks women for how they look, and certain things. His favorite thing is women aged like milk, which is gross on several levels. But
because Clint Eastwood's so hot.
Huh?
I said, because Clint Eastwood is so hot. I think it's a way. People just age. It's just called aging. Jesus Christ. But as a society.
Some of us fight it pretty hard. Let's just throw it out there.
Sure.
But,
usually those people, though, who are obsessed with women aging are usually also the people who, the Matt Walshes of the world who describe how, girls are at their pubescent peak at 14 or 16 and blah, blah, blah. They start questioning the age of consent because they're not sure that they shouldn't be able to fuck teenage girls. There's too much. The Venn diagram of crossover between I'm repulsed by women naturally aging by the time they're in their 30s and people who think the age of consent should be lowered. It's not a perfect circle, but it's close. It's a weird overlap.
It's pretty close. And then, of course, they attack, particularly, I believe now the favorite groomer targets are trans people, of course, as groomers and pedophiles. And it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. Wait a minute. You're the one that's criticizing women for getting older and saying how they're not attractive. That's what I mean.
And defending child marriage and trying to stop children from being able to get abortions if they were assaulted and impregnated. But they want to protect kids.
For me, looking at it, particularly with my experience, just with as many men as I have, that sounds really bad. But I've had a lot of interactions one-on-one with men in strip clubs, and it's an environment where it's very anonymous. So people tend to be very open. And when I see posts like that from people that have those leanings, for me, like their whole brain is just laid bare. Like I said, it feels to me like a huge lack of self-awareness in what they're saying. It's like they're just calling themselves out. I think the dude that looks like a hot dog that rolled under the couch, fighter guy, Andrew Tate, he posted something about.
It's like, who are you talking about?
I didn't even know. A hot dog. I really tried not to know who that guy was, and I failed. Yeah. It was one of those things where I really tried to remain willfully ignorant and just utterly failed. But he posted something about, a woman who thinks you're the best man or you're the best whatever. And he went on to this stupid ass post about how to find a quality woman or somebody that won't cheat on you or whatever. But the operative word for me was think. A woman that thinks you're the greatest man alive. This is somebody who has basically admitted that he has to lie and con chicks to sleep with him. Yeah. So that is not a quality man. That is not an alpha man. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have to trick people into sleeping with you, you're not that great. You're just a con man. Maybe spend your effort on actually being somebody that people want to sleep with, and you don't have to lie to them about it. But ironically, in that post, I'm looking at the wording and I'm thinking he basically just alluded to the fact that he is unable on his own merits without deceiving people to get a partner. And that in itself means he is not a quality partner. He is not somebody that somebody wants to be in a relationship with. He is somebody that is the shitbag, as he's talking about, low quality chicks or chicks that are going to cheat on you or whatever the fuck. But for me, like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is the most insecure person I've ever seen. Like, it's all a fake facade. And the people that glom onto him are buying into this pretend thing that he thinks he is this. And he's just, I find him sexually repulsive.
Do you ever worry that to him, it isn't a facade, that he's actually managed to convince himself that it's an actual, like, genuine delusion, and that he's just living in pools of serotonin in his own brain? And that almost would make it worse for me, like, that he is getting joy out of this garbage he's doing.
I think, and once again, speaking as a layman, so I'm going to use terms that, I maybe have no business using, but I think in terms of that type of narcissism, right? Yeah. Because he's very much caught up into himself. His whole world is himself. I think for the most part, I would guess that probably 90% of the time they are convinced that they are their facade, that they are their skin that they've made. Yeah. And I think when it gets dangerous is that 10%. When that little piece of light and knowledge inside, starts to shine itself, and they start to go, hey, I'm really a dirtbag. And I think that's where it gets, that is what scares me, because that is where I feel like people snap and they go, actually there's a book by Will Storr called The Status Game that actually kind of explains that really well. This built up status that we all seek, right? I mean, let's just face it. That's just human beings in society. We're all trying to be, recognized, or we're all trying to be, feel important or feel needed or whatever. And for people like that, when they have that extreme like narcissism and they get like knocked down, they get shown reality, they get seen this whole, thing, all of a sudden they're looking in the mirror and they're like, wow, I suck. I think that's when the whole thing crumbles. So I think if somebody is really able to buy in that hard to their lie, to where there is no crack, to where they are 100% convinced, I think that probably crosses the line into like a real mental illness, like a delusion. But I think for the most part, narcissists behave the way they do. They lie, they con, they cheat, because that's all part of their game, is creating that and maintaining that facade to other people. But I think deep down, they know that they're shitheads.
Yeah, one hopes, but at the end of the day, there are people like him. There are people like Donald Trump. There are people like Piers Morgan.
I try not to say his name. Yeah. But yes, definitely in my mind.
This is a Donald Trump stat channel. I don't know what you're talking about. We stand the Trump bed over here. No, we don't.
Okay, I'm gonna have to log off now.
I have a Trump wig,
I worked with just out of reach. I worked with somebody with a lot of that type of personality. Actually pretty much that malignant narcissism, right? Where he builds up this whole pretend version of himself that he puts out to other people. And then he basically starts chaos and lies and drama, that feeds his ego, but it also manipulates other people in a way that feeds his ego. So It's just this one like snake eating its own tail, where he's just constantly fueling. And I don't really think there's any other goal other than the ego. Like, that's what I actually found so dangerous about Trump, is that I don't think that he has any ideology or any goal or any real, even politics or belief system other than himself. Yeah. I believe that is the entire, and that is dangerous.
I think he would have ran for whichever party at the time he thought would get him there. Yeah.
Definitely.
If somehow Democrats were being nicer to him back when, Romney was vying for his endorsement, and I don't think McCain ever did. I don't remember. But yeah, if at that time he was still endorsing Democrats, and then I totally agree. Well, he follows whatever aggrandizes him the most, which is weird because Andrew Tate then became a Muslim, which seems so incompatible with his.
Oh, but it's super compatible with misogyny, though.
That's true. Yeah.
See? I see the connection there.
There's also a type of elite sort of, you see it in like Dubai, and you see it in parts of Saudi Arabia, where the elite men in those societies don't have to follow any of the rules. And I think he's just basically joining the prince's realm of Islam, where it's like, no, having lots of women, that's your harem. They're all married to you. And all the riches you're making. That's not
like Catholics and evangelicals and all that kind of stuff too, because once you make enough money, the rules don't apply to you. And if you're a narcissist, because the list is really long of famous rich narcissists, now you're surrounding yourself with people who are incentivized to feed your facade and your fake skin. So now you have people that are never telling you, hey, you're wrong. Hey, this isn't right. Hey, this isn't cool. You've lost now any, ability to any kind of checks and balances against that, where a normal person, if I fuck up, I have friends that are going to be like, hey, dude, not cool. You know what I'm saying? But if I was a billionaire and I had just paid off their mortgage or bought them a fucking Maserati, they're not going to tell me that.
Yeah.
And that in itself, I think is also very dangerous, at least when you're in a position of power. Otherwise you're just a douche.
Let me shoot out an invite for calls. So right now, if you have a question, obviously we leave lines for atheists and theists. We have lines for both right now. If you have a question about deconstructing from purity culture, if you have a question about sex work, you have a question on any of the topics we're talking about, somebody wants to call in and ask how is the culture surrounding Andrew Tate changed the way sex workers are treated or something. I don't know. I'm just making up questions for you. And if somebody wants to call in and challenge, an atheist or a theist, if you want to defend purity culture, you feel like you have as a secular person that you think you have a secular defense of against quote unquote sluttiness, we take that call too. We don't shy away from the conflicts here. And then general calls, theism, atheism. There are lines open right now. The number is there at the bottom of the screen, 720-619-2288. If you'd like to call in from the web, there is a web caller also available down in the description. There's a link you can click. There's something very weird and very interesting about how Jordan Peterson was very popular amongst atheists until a couple of years ago when he started talking about God. Then he had to sit down, I think it was billed more as a conversation, but a debate with Matt Dillahunty on it, and was sort of exposed as like all these atheists who were very taken with him, hearing him use the same type of reasoning and language to argue against atheism and to say things like, well, then you're behaving like you are a theist. So that was less... I should have added a little more Kermit to my voice, but he was sort of exposed as a fraud for doing that, and a lot of his goodwill amongst not the best thinkers in the atheist community was lost. Somehow Andrew Tate becoming a Muslim hasn't changed the atheists who really like Andrew Tate, and it's the weirdest fucking thing to me. Like, where in your brain do you live with that? Islam is the worst religion that is massively followed right now. Like it's obviously, it's very sexist, misogynistic, anti-queer. It is worse than mainstream Christianity, the mainstream versions. Obviously, there are lots of progressive Muslims who are amazing. I have Muslims in my life. I love those people. We're not talking about that. We're talking about mainstream and sort of concepts. There are versions of Christianity like Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses that start to compete on levels of how horrible they are with the mainstream, even though those on the Christian side are extreme. And so to take someone like Andrew Tate and have him join a religion so terrible and still follow him, I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they justify that. I don't know.
So fortunately, I have avoided most of Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure I've actually ever listened to anything he said, and I'm going to keep it that way. I don't need to be enlightened. There are certain things that I, sort of, I guess, insulate myself from. Just for my own sense of well-being, and he is one of them. Like I said, Andrew Tate wiggled his way in because he's like a little hot dog. With a face. I think Tate's appeal, from what I can see, and from I think maybe the one person I know that watches or listens to him or whatever, is that he really speaks to men's just desperate insecurities. And for whatever reason, the 2 or 3 chicks he's been able to fool, a lot of men that have those same types of insecurities into believing that he is this confident, like self-made person. And it's like, he's telling them that they can be successful and they can be this and they can be that, you can do what I do. And it's like, no, dude, you made most of his money fighting or whatever. Right. And the average fucking dude isn't doing that. The people I know that have done
it's worse than that. He made most of his money from casinos, I believe.
Or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, type of wealth that is not accessible to most people.
Yeah, but he's selling this fantasy to people that really want to believe this fantasy. Yeah. That they too can be this super guy with all these stupid cars and, a dumb face and whatever, and still get all these women. And he's, I think he just really speaks to male insecurity in that way. And I read an article by Dr. Daryl Ray. Actually, when I was getting ready to go, I gave a little talk at their Recovering from Religion's fall excursion. And before I did that, I wanted to learn a little bit more so that I'd sound like an idiot, really. And Dr. Daryl Ray wrote an article called Male Shame, and he really kind of lays out just the pressure that is on men sometimes, to be masculine, to be manly, to be that lion, to be that, that alpha male, whatever the fuck. And it really is a facade. It's a fake thing. It's not what women want. Women don't want dudes that are crushing beer cans on their fucking head. They don't, they don't want that. But for some reason, they've been sold this idea of what they're supposed to be. And for me, in my own experience, that was really highlighted when I would be, I very rarely worked weekend nights because I just didn't like the crowds. But, those nights you would get like bachelor parties, or you'd get groups of guys would come in, and you would sit and, you would go up to the group and they would be like, hooting and hollering and, hey, turn around, baby. Hey, all this stuff, and I'm like, And if I ended up taking one of them away, you would see their behavior almost switch, because when they're one-on-one with you, they're not treating you like a piece of meat. They're treating you like a human being. Because this is now them. Now they don't have to act like Mr. Macho, bravado, big dude, let's pull out the measuring tape and see who's got the bigger dick guy. All of a sudden he's like human being. And
now he wants to impress you, not his buddies.
And sometimes not even that, but just the whole demeanor changes. And that really highlights what Dr. Daryl Ray was talking about in his article about male shame. And I think that Andrew Tate, maybe to a lesser extent, Jordan Peterson, to my understanding about what he talks about, is kind of in the same vein there, where they have this fantasy. And, it's probably not all unlike the fantasy of, chicks wanting to be skinny or wanting to be fit or wanting to have, the right clothing or nails, or, I think women, obviously have pressures to conform to what society thinks they should be too. They should be feminine or whatever. In fact, the malignant narcissist I was talking about, that I worked with for a long time, used to like to insult me by calling me masculine. He used to, and I guess I probably have some rough traits. I used to dance to heavy metal. I was never really into like sparkles and glitter and like that kind of glam thing. I was always very much like, down to business kind of a person. So I probably had some like masculine traits, and I'm small. So I tend to come off, I'm like a chihuahua. I'm all bark. When you're little, you got to be mean. And so
Chihuahuas bite. I don't know what you mean.
I don't know. I know. I haven't been bitten by one, but I've been tempted to kick one. That's all I'm saying.
They're vicious. They're vicious little shit. I mean, my dog, I'm not kidding. My dog's half Chihuahua, half Husky.
So chances are I'm a vicious little shit if provoked. But that was his choice to insult me. And once again, that's very telling, because I didn't give a shit. I'm like, right on. I grew up with 3 brothers. Cool. I'm tough as shit. I'm little, but I'll kick your ass, which isn't true. I'll probably just talk shit until you cry. It's really my method. But like, what I'm saying? That was his way to insult me. And the reason he thought that would work is because he was thinking that I was trying to live up to this feminine ideal and this, this kind of thing. And so I think a lot of that type of idea of living up to a certain standard is, and these guys, pretend to be that standard. For me, it's an obvious like con job. Like I'm looking at him, I'm like, oh my God, you're like painfully insecure. That is not those aren't confident people to me. But yeah, I think people that are buying into that idea of male shame, masculinity, lions, not sheep, or whatever the fuck that is. I think those are the people that get attracted to those kinds of men. Yeah.
There's somebody in the chat who said they wanted to see pictures of my dog, not realizing my dog is in the chat and has a profile photo. Dexter Snow is my dog that you're looking at him right now, if you're in that chat. I trained him to use the YouTube chat. It's definitely him. Anyway, let's go ahead and I think let's maybe start taking a call. But yeah, there's I feel like I could just do this topic for the next couple hours. So if I don't stop us somewhere and say, let's start taking some calls, we won't end up taking calls. But if you're thinking about calling in, you should. Again, topics tonight being sex work, purity culture, becoming an author. I suppose you could call and ask about that too. Is that a topic you'd like to take? We'd probably make that one short.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my only advice would be just start writing.
Yeah.
I hope somebody reads it.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah. Install, get an editor. If you can't afford an editor, you could use ChatGPT. There's things, I did that on purpose because Erin and I were talking about articles written by ChatGPT yesterday. I knew she wouldn't appreciate that advice. As an editor, not as the thing you really hated was I fed ChatGPT a couple articles of Erin, and then I said, write a new article like your Erin. And that was the thing that was disturbing. What do you think about it as an editor, though? What about just putting in, here's an article I wrote, clean it up. Make sure I'm not redundant. Make sure I used good whatever.
Well, that literally being my very first experience with AI, my biggest criticism about what you sent me was the redundancy. Yeah. And was the use, and I guess part of it laid bare, it's like when you ask somebody's opinion, or, you ask somebody to mimic you and you're like, oh, do I really look like that? Fuck.
Yeah. When someone does an impression of you and you're like,
is that me? Okay. I'm going to go hang myself. No. Yeah. So I guess part of me was, maybe I was a tad insulted. I was like, oh God, I hope that's not me. But if the editing is like the writing, then I would say it would suck. Honestly, I'm not sure that my editing process is the same as other people. I tend to go back. If I get on a narrative, or I have something that's just sort of flowing out, and then I'll drop it, lose it, the cat comes bugged me or something like that. I'll go back and reread it to pick up where I was at. And then I end up editing kind of as I go along. So a lot of times, I don't end up with just a whole rough draft. It's already been edited kind of as I go, because I go back and reread it and try to make sure that I'm not being redundant and whatever. So I don't know how a chat or how the AI would do that editing. I think it's just in my own process. I think it's so essential what I do, the way I do it, that I don't think I would personally like to use it.
I think for me, I definitely would use it, but I would train it a lot. So I only gave it 2 articles when we had it do the thing with you yesterday. You could take something like that and feed them all 6 of your books, and then go when I'm asking for editing advice, I'm saying, I want there to be consistency. The most recent book, this book was the one I wrote the most recently and was edited the best. Favor that editing style, but also, it's pretty. This is the funny thing, because it was yesterday when we were talking, I felt like I was defending AI to you, where everybody on this channel thinks I'm the biggest AI hater because I talk mad shit about it also, and I talk more shit about it. It's funny because I should have brought up more of my involvement with AI as I've talked to it with people, because people think I'm just an AI naysayer when I use AI way more than anybody I know. And certainly more than any of the people in the chat being like, Jimmy's being alarmist. It's like, okay, well, Jimmy knows these tools a lot more than you. But anyway, it's a topic that I shouldn't have brought up, because this is another topic I could do for 2 more hours. So let's just talk to Stephen in Michigan instead. Stephen in Michigan, you are on the line with Jimmy and Erin. How are you?
If that's me, it's Stephen in Mississippi.
Ah, that's right.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot more redneck than Michigan, I guess.
Well, I've got MI on my in my notes, so I'll just fix it here. MS. Mississippi's MS. Yeah. Good enough. Anyway, go on, Stephen.
Yeah. So I long-time listener, first-time caller to pretty much any show. Love what you do, man. Anyways, I'll stop the preamble.
I appreciate it. Go on.
So my girlfriend and I were thinking about getting married. We've been planning on getting married, but we both are non-believers. So there's that whole aspect of how do you get 2 religious families to a non-religious wedding. But I'm a little hung up because I think, I've almost gotten married to 2 girls, and they would have been disastrous. They would have been terrible divorces. I probably would have lost a lot of money in the divorces. I mean, how do I justify actually getting married? I want to be with a girl.
Hey, man, your audio sounds like you are grinding meat or something at the same time. I don't know what is going on, but it started out strong, and now it's just terrible.
I walked away from the phone Sorry.
Let's not do that.
I'm a walker when I talk.
I get it. Yeah. Let's stay with the phone. So you're thinking about getting married. I think you said you've been divorced twice. Is that what you said?
I have not been divorced, but I almost got married. I've been engaged twice.
Okay.
And, I mean, they could have been disastrous. If I'd have gone through with them, it would have been disastrous. It would have been terrible. So, I mean, how do I justify this? I kind of am looking for advice. And
so you don't want to get married.
Earlier,
you don't want to get married, but your girlfriend's family wants you to marry your girlfriend.
I would like to get married.
Okay.
I just don't want to make the mistake. I don't want to make the mistake of getting involved in a quick marriage. You know how you have to go through the phase of lust. Usually takes you about a year and a half before you figure out whether or not you're actually going to stay with the person when the true colors come out.
I think that's a thing people say. I think there are also people who show off their true colors from very early on in a relationship. But I would consider myself the latter, but I've dated both, the latter and the former.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to get married. There's a lot of reasons to get married. I just don't want to end up in the problematic marriage where we'll end up fighting and getting divorced for multiple different reasons in no time. So I don't know. How do you parse that out? Because, obviously I'm not forced into staying into a marriage. So, I mean, how does an atheist go through this scenario? How do I know that I'm with the girl that I should be with? I guess.
Erin, I'm give it to you first. I'm not particularly pro-marriage, so it's going to be a sort of wild thing. I hear myself echo.
Suddenly. Oh.
I hear you echoing too.
I muted my microphone for a minute because there's like a gnarly thunderstorm going on outside right now.
Got it.
So I don't know if that did it or not, but it was crashing against the window. So I was thinking I should mute it.
No, yeah, no worries.
I don't think I'm particularly pro marriage either, actually. I think that marriage is like it's like a legal contract. You get cheaper insurance rates. Yeah. You have certain benefits to being married. But when things do go south, if one of you or both of you don't want to stay together or something like that, well, now it's a big pain in the butt, and then you throw in kids and everything else. Yeah. I think that relationships, at least in my opinion, I believe that relationships are I think they're really separate from marriage. The marriage is something you do, like I said, for the insurance discounts, for being able to, own a house together or do whatever. I just don't think it's, it's more like a financial legal contract. When it comes to your relationship and your emotional involvement with somebody, that is something that's way different. And that it either feels right or it doesn't. You're either happy with that person all the time or you're not. And if you're not, are you guys both willing to work on why? Nobody walks into a partnership perfect. It's never going to be 50-50. So you're looking for somebody who's more like a teammate or a partner. And I think marriage is really tertiary to that. It's a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. Obviously, in religious cultures, it's a whole different thing because you're involving this ghost thing, that apparently likes watching you have sex and has opinions on it. Your relationship is your relationship, and it needs to be about you and the person that you're in that relationship with, and that's it.
If I can cut in real quick.
Go ahead.
I think I have the perfect girl. I've never been with a girl more perfect than her. We're madly in love with each other.
How old are the two of you?
It seems logical. 36 and 37.
And how long have you been together?
5 years. We both absolutely want to get married. And with your episode with Matt the other day about wills and who's in charge of everything after you die, that's what made me think about it more. But I mean, my concern is that if we actually go through with it and then the personality change happens, which I've seen 2 times already, there women, I don't know, maybe not just women. Let me just say people change after you get past a certain line and you start nesting, and I don't know, maybe personalities clash, and then now you've got a legal battle to get out of the relationship. And then you
don't really have a legal battle to get.
things.
You can get out of the relationship anytime you want. The legal battles would surround property and stuff that is considered to be owned by either both of you or one of you and stuff. That stuff, if you're that worried about, you can get all of everything that it sounds like you're saying you're worried about. There are legal things you can do.
Yeah,
now, if I've dated somebody for 5 years and I'm still feeling that strong about it, I don't know how worried I would be feeling, but about that sort of thing. But prenups exist. They also have prenups that expire, or they do phased expiring, where it's like after 10 years or whatever, the terms of you get nothing, you slowly changes into something else, because that sort of weeds out the people who are in it, potentially could be in it for something short. And then if when you break up, they're bitter towards you, they're interested in taking as much as you want. If you get one of those people, it's not, I think most people don't.
I don't have a lot of money, but we do have kids involved.
Sure.
And that's a huge thing to think about.
So what are the reasons, Stephen, what are the reasons your girlfriend's family wants you to get married?
I wouldn't say just her family. I would say both our families want us to get married. I don't know. It's just the normal.
Because
we also want to get married. We would get multiple benefits, tax reasons, insurance reasons. There are multiple reasons. And then, end of life decisions. There are lots of reasons to get married.
So realistically, if you have kids, you live in Mississippi, which means you're probably already common law married. Maybe not, but at some point you will be. So your legal, if anything, your worries are at some point going to be ruined if you don't figure it out and either get the actual contracts with prenups and stuff in place if you need to have it. Because from the state's perspective, you have kids, you live together. Yeah.
We don't have kids together. She has 2 kids and I have 1.
I see.
Totally separate. We don't live together. We live in separate houses. And even after marriage, we would want to keep it that way. It's a weird relationship, but it works for both of us. We love our relationship, but I just don't want it to get ruined by a contract, a marriage. I don't know.
I feel like
you guys might have some good advice.
I think you just do it. I mean, I'm not pro marriage, but it sounds like you are, she is, the things are right. You can go and get a contract. You aren't common law married if you're not living together, unless you say, there's some states where like you're married the moment you both say you're married. Colorado's that way. If you can do it with anybody on any day. I can meet a person and say, and we could agree we're married. And in the state of Colorado, we're married. It's a stupid law. If you ask me, it's a weird thing to do, but whatever. I don't know. This is a call that doesn't feel like I can't speak well to it. Again, I'm not particularly pro marriage, but if you are, and all those things are in there, you get whatever legal stuff you need to mitigate the things you're afraid of. There's literally a legal protection of everything you could be afraid of. Sometimes people are insulted when you try to do it, but then at that point it's like, look, at my age, I've almost married other people before. I thought they were not going to turn out to be awful for me. So the fact that we're great now doesn't speak to the future, and this protects both of us. I don't know. I don't know. Erin,
with all due respect to me, I was kind of thinking that her perspective would be what I'm looking for. I'm not sure. Sorry.
What do you mean?
To be insulting.
No, I don't get it. I couldn't be insulted because I don't understand what you mean.
Well, I mean, she seemed like the right person to answer the question, is why I called in. I listen all the time, and I've never called in before.
Erin, I got you. You're saying Jimmy say less, Erin say more. That's fine. Erin, say more.
Yeah, shut up, Jimmy.
I don't give a fuck. That's fine. Try harder to insult me next time. Go ahead, Erin.
what struck me is you saying that you're worried about her changing and her personality changing. I think the fact is that both of you are going to change. As you get older, you're going to change. Your relationship is going to change.
Absolutely.
And you either change together or you don't. And if you stay connected, that's it. But people are going to change. Like that is like, well, I can't remember who says that, but right. That's the one constant in life is that everything changes and people change. You grow, you get older, you grow together. That's the whole point. And I'm a huge, if not a huge proponent of marriage, because I live in California. I've been married for actually 23 years. And there's a lot of change that happens. There's a lot of growth that happens. And I'm a huge proponent of counseling. You know, if you find the right person and you love the person, you know, and you find that you have differences or your communication is lacking or you're not sure how to get through it, you know, there's always therapy, which I think is, you know, really helpful in a lot of ways. There's, of course, you're probably going to want to find a secular therapist. Actually, Daryl Ray again, and Recovering from Religion does a secular therapy project. So, you know, you can certainly find one that way. But I think you need to also recognize that you're going to change too. You know, it might not be her that changes. It could be you, you know, and you're both, you know, marriage is a choice. It's every day you wake up and you decide that you still want to be with this person. You still are having fun with this person. This relationship is giving something to both of you. And, you know, if it turns out that you feel like it's heading in a different direction, you have a way to go and you have people to help you work through it. But me personally, I found that, you know, we've been lucky enough to grow together. We never stop talking. We find things that we like to do together. We find things that we like to do apart. We, you know, respect boundaries. And yeah, like I said, I think the contract part of it is just you know, that's just a legal aspect of it. But it sounds like, you know, you're afraid of life. It's going to happen. You're going to change. She's going to change. You just got to do it together.
Okay, so you're essentially saying just go ahead and do it. I mean, I'm right there on that fence. I'm ready to jump over it.
I'm just telling you what I think about it. Yeah, it sounds like you love the person and you're having a good time. And I think your fears are
amazing.
Yeah, you're worried about something that hasn't happened yet. 5 years that's a good test period, and you're older. You know, it's not like your kids. You know, you've had experiences.
I've just had bad experiences is all. My exes, you know, put on a good front, and then when it got down to the end, you know, they ended up being demons. For lack of a better word.
If we all have baggage, we all have people, you know, you're all bringing different experiences to other things, but it's not necessarily really fair to bring that to this relationship of 5 years. You know, this person hasn't done that, or you wouldn't even be talking about what you're doing. So, you know, to say that this, you know, you're afraid, of course you're afraid because that's what happened, but that doesn't mean that this is going to happen. And that kind of takes me back to my point where, you know, there may be some things you need to work through, and maybe she needs to work through so that you're not afraid of, you know, this like devil person coming out once you know, put on a couple of rings.
Yeah. Fully agree. I mean, hopefully it doesn't. We're on the verge. We kind of are, in a way, we're planning to set up the marriage soon. I'm just not fully committed. I'm just not like all in, I guess I would say. I still have my reservations, but maybe I should just get rid of them. I don't know. I've had bad experiences in the past where once you get close enough that something changes and then you all of a sudden are mortal enemies and you feel like you're stuck with each other.
How long were those relationships? They were like 5 years too?
Yeah, I usually have multiple year relationships.
But were they as long? They had
they
had as strong as a foundation?
Oh man, my first girlfriend here in Mississippi was one of my worst. We were together for 4 years. She was amazing. I still feel like I love her, but holy hell, did she become a demon out of nowhere? I don't know what happened. Maybe I was an asshole. Maybe she was an asshole. Maybe some bridges were crossed. But we split in the worst way. And it's like, man, if we had gotten married, she would have wrung me out to dry. Lawyers would have enjoyed I guess you've been here, the fuck out of that lawsuit. So I don't know. That's all I'm worried about. It's stupid, probably.
On that basis, I don't think it's unreasonable for you to say, like, so I'm going to go and get legal protections to make sure, because it might all fall. Like, that's the thing is, on the one hand, it sounds like you should take the risk, and the relationship sounds worth taking a shot for, but also realistically, it might also blow up one day, and maybe your relationship, maybe you're the problem, maybe you're not, but whatever reason, it might all fall apart again. That's sort of just a part of life that you can't predict. Lots of things in life are scary, but life isn't really worth living if you don't take risks. So I don't know.
I just thought I would get an atheist perspective on how you guys would go about that scenario, but it seems like it is what it is. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and hopefully it all works out in the end. I appreciate you having me on the line.
Sure.
Obviously, go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Thanks.
And everybody else is awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Steven.
Good luck.
Bye, buddy.
Bye. There's a really disappointing thing that happened, which is several people in chat seeming to project that they were going to call in, and at least some of them projecting that they were going to call in with some sort of challenge, and yet none of them have called in. It's to the point that I checked to make sure that there's not something broken on our end to prevent people from calling in. Now, granted, there's one blocked call that went out, but first of all, it wasn't only one person, and I don't like the blocked people wouldn't have been the ones in the chat because we would have blocked them in chat too. Like, people who are blocked from calling are not just blocked from calling. The Otangelos of the world. It's very disappointing. But we do have completely open lines right now if anybody wants to call in. I was looking forward to some of these people acting like they were going to bring some challenges, but have not done so. I get it. It's scary, and you're a scaredy person. It happens. It happens. You think you're ready, and then you back off because it turns out you're afraid. It happens. But we do have fully open lines right now. 720-619-2288. Hit the link in the browser. Yeah, I don't know. I don't personally think that I would probably. It's one of those things where I can't imagine marrying somebody for anything besides like just on paper good reasons. Like, okay, in the situation we're in, it's going to be better for taxes. It's going to be better for whatever. Like, it would have to be a purely logical decision. Otherwise, the institution of marriage has such baggage that I don't want any part of.
I think there's actually a lot of like good, like you said, like as financially, it generally is a really good move. Yeah. But I do think that especially people, coming from other relationships or whatever, we talk about religious deconstruction and deconstructing, poisonous ideas and stuff like that. Well, I mean, that applies to bad relationships, that absolutely, you're bringing that stuff into a new relationship. So, he was talking about, his other relationships and basically projecting those fears onto this new person, which, may not particularly be all that fair to this new person who may love him, and doesn't understand why he's afraid. And I think honestly, the biggest thing is communication. And if that communication is lacking, if he's not able to express why he's afraid or starts, that those fears start manifesting themselves into behaviors that she doesn't understand because he's not talking about it, then I think honestly, the first step maybe before marriage would be to go to couples therapy, or maybe he needs to go to a therapist and just talk about his other relationships. There's a possibility that, maybe he was the dick, who knows, yeah. But until you examine that stuff, that is just going to carry on into other relationships. I really think the marriage question is a secondary issue.
Yeah, there's definitely an issue with being in a relationship that you're expecting to fail. But at the same time, I understand that particular insecurity, because my own history more with family than anything that I feel like is, so I'm on both sides of this where I'm like, I understand it, and I understand having those insecurities, and then even like how it can be unfair to another person. So if you're going to hold them, you need to make sure you acknowledge them and try and talk about them with your partners and say, like, I'm going to do everything I can to not make this your problem, while recognizing that I exist with this mental state of, because it's a type of paranoia is what you're describing. And yeah, paranoia is not healthy for the people who are paranoid or the people that you are projecting that paranoia onto. Currently waiting for a couple of calls to get screened before we throw them up. That way I have all the info I need for tags and stuff. I guess, one thing we're supposed to do that I keep forgetting to do lately is announce upcoming shows for the line. Let me pull them up here. But we do have an interesting, week coming up. This week and next week are both packed with great stuff. I know tomorrow is going to be the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty, and he has Brady Goodwin, aka Be Good, on tomorrow. You might remember Be Good from a recent episode of Skeptalk with Shannon Q. Then on Thursday, the Transatlantic Call-In Show will be with Arden and Katy. I do expect that this weekend there will probably be an episode of 'Cause I Wanna, but that's the nature of 'Cause I Wanna. I can't promise because I don't know. There's a chance I won't wanna. Matt won't wanna. This Sunday, Matt and I will return for the Sunday show. Next week, Skeptalk is actually up in the air, but then this time next week, Seth Andrews will be joining me on this very program at the same time next Tuesday. So let's talk to, this is going to be an interesting one, a person who thinks we're wrong about Andrew Tate and why people are attracted to him or to that kind of person. We're talking to Daniel in Florida. Now, Daniel, is this one of those tricky worded things where you also don't like Andrew Tate? You just think we're wrong? Like, you think your reasons to dislike him are right and ours are wrong? Or do you think we're wrong to think Andrew Tate is a cringy, edgelordy piece of shit?
The first part was correct, Jimmy.
Okay.
I think I might have chosen my words incorrectly to the screener.
So give us your position.
So let me give you some background. I'm 25 years old. I graduated college fairly recently, so I've got this, I guess you could say I have my finger on the pulse of today's youth in a way that, I'm not going to make the obvious joke. And
Go on. It's okay.
So I've seen these people, like I've interacted with them in person and online, and the way that things are kind of set up right now is there's kind of a sexual hierarchy when you're talking about college and you're talking about all these people who, are just fresh out of high school and they're with a bunch of people that are their same age, and they're very aware of these hierarchies, and they're very aware of the more attractive people, more popular people. They get the things that everyone wants, and if you're between the ages of 18 and 22, that's procreation, that's sex, and people like Andrew Tate are
those might be two separate things there, buddy. But go on.
What's two separate things?
Sex and procreation.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Simulating procreation, perhaps, but I don't think everyone's getting into high school or getting out of high school, going to college, and going, "Let's get pregnant right away."
Yes. Okay. that was a miss. That was incorrect.
No worries.
Language there. It should just sex. Okay.
It happens. Yeah, so the drive to procreate, perhaps.
All right. So people like Andrew Tate, they're advertising a shortcut to the sex. People look at Andrew Tate and they don't care if he's bullshitting them. They don't care if what he's saying is factually incorrect or if he's manipulating people. All of that can really take a backseat to the fact that he did get to the end. He got the sex. He got the women. And if you're a young guy, you're 18, 19 years old, and maybe the cute girl in your class isn't texting you back, and you're feeling a little ostracized. It's basically like a lifeboat. It's like someone's reaching out to you, and you're in the ocean of loneliness, and they're teaching you what you have to do to get there. It doesn't matter to you if you're a bad person, because as far as you care, you're already losing. You're already not having sex.
So Daniel, you've caught in saying you think we're wrong. I think you are correctly addressing with poor wording some of the core issues. So as far as the core issue goes, I don't know as far as what you thought we were wrong about. But I do think that how do I want to put it? I think if you believe that people who are following someone like Andrew Tate, if you believe they have the self-awareness to say, I don't care if I'm a bad person, I'm going to do this anyway, as opposed to what I think is actually happening, which is that they're justifying it actually does make them a good person. And these outcomes that they think for women, while women might be hesitant to them or resistant to them, they think that there's actually nobility and that they're actually trying to force a better way of life onto women as a part of the shit they're doing. I don't know. I guess I'm confused because it says that you called in thinking we're wrong. So I guess I'd like to know specifically what you think we're wrong about.
Yeah, so like you pointed out, it was a tricky wording thing. I in retrospect, I wouldn't use the word wrong. I would say that I think that maybe when you were discussing it, you didn't have the full breadth of detail in what you were saying. Whether or not you agreed with me, I just wasn't aware of because you didn't mention it.
Okay, fine. I think the number... Go on, Erin, sorry.
I was going to say, I actually agreed with what he says. I have a recently turned 18-year-old, and we've actually discussed some of this stuff, or at least some of the personalities online, because he started to get pulled down some really freaky stuff. And so we had a lot of discussions of, what's real and what's not, and sourcing, and of course that went into cringe and all sorts of stuff. And I do think you're right. He's selling a product. He's selling a get rich quick scheme, except for pussy. He's selling a take this diet pill and you can eat whatever you want and lose weight. He's taking advantage of people's wants, desires. He's selling them a product that they want because they're lonely, they're insecure. And but I would say that at least from some of the posts that I've seen, and like I said, I've gone out of my way to avoid him because he physically makes me ill. But what I have seen is he does seem to paint himself like a good person, like the better, like he's an actual good guy. Like he's the, like he's the hero, and he's not the hero. He's the scam. So even if people are looking at him and they know he's the scam, he's still selling snake oil. Because I don't know if that's the goal, just the short-term, whatever. I mean, I don't see why you need some douche telling you how to be a douche. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like why is but I totally agree with what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense that, he's the infomercial for, slaying pussy, without actually having to be a decent human being.
I think a lot of the appeal of Andrew Tate is the same as the appeal for men of Mormonism. Clearly we have something hardwired in our brain that seems to be more common among men, which is this idea that when we're born into the world, we are the main character of some tremendous adventure. And then you get hit by the world and you start to have that undermined and you start to feel like a small cog in a bigger program. And then someone comes along and says, what if I told you you're actually like the most important person in the universe and it's everybody else's problem that's causing you issues? That's pretty much Mormonism and Andrew Tate. It's you are you have a destiny and you just have to go out and get it and take it and fuck whatever other people want for you. And it is always funny. And I remember this from the days of when I first left Mormonism. I was still very interested in participating in pickup artist forums and stuff and reading about all the ways to get women and stuff. And there were things I learned there about being confident, because confidence is hot. Luckily I don't drink and I really haven't drank as much in my adult years. And a lot of pickup artist stuff is go practice at bars on intoxicated people. No,
they practice on strippers.
I'm sure that too. Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I've had quite a few guys come in deliberately and say that I'm not good at talking to women. How do I do this? And I've sat down and coached dudes and been like, you know what, you're a decent looking guy, or sometimes they're good looking or sometimes they're not quite. And you point out other qualities.
Yeah, I mean the pickup artist stuff is more nefarious than practicing just talking to women generally. That almost sounds kind of sweet.
A lot of times, actually, I've had a couple of people that it is because they're genuinely, they're like, yeah, I don't want to be a dick. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm really nervous. I'm lonely. Obviously, I've dealt with a lot of lonely dudes. I mean, it's sort of my thing. But they're not selling Rogan, Tate, Peterson, whoever these fuckers, they're not selling anything different than Oprah and Gwyneth Paltrow and, Dr. Oz and shit are. It's the same shtick. It's,
And just ignore the fact that genetically I've won a looks lottery and am very attractive. Ignore the fact that I'm extremely rich. I'm not talking about myself. This is the thing that I thought was very funny in the pickup artist community is how they'd be like, and by the way, even though everybody giving these seminars is super hot and also has the money to be just traveling the world all the time and all this stuff, that's not related to our success and why we're saying it's so easy. And then the added like natural confidence you get with the way you grow up in a society when you are conventionally attractive versus not. That's nothing to do with all of this. It's all very religion familiar. And it's very sad to see anybody fall for it. And then it's surprising to see people who fancy themselves skeptical because they're atheists, doesn't mean they actually are, fall for such obvious religious style scams again. Anyway, Daniel, go on. Oh, sorry. Okay. Erin, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that I don't think that atheism and skepticism necessarily go together all the time.
Yeah.
I know there's plenty of atheists that are not skeptics.
I'd say most atheists aren't skeptics. Maybe most atheists think they are. But no, I don't even think most atheists are skeptics. I don't think most atheists are good people. Unfortunately, that term means very little, and it makes it impossible to gatekeep when maybe it would be better if we could. Anyway, sorry, go on, Daniel.
I would agree with that last point, especially. I would say that most atheists believe that being an atheist is what you need to be a skeptic, and the whole critical thinking part, they can just go around that. Yeah,
I agree. Anything else before we let you go?
I was going to say, I guess related to the initial point was the kind of label of incel, especially because like Erin was saying, like how, it's a charlatan, basically. These people are charlatans. And the followers, I think you'll notice that, especially on the internet, they're referred to as incels. And what that's doing is it's kind of playing the game on their own terms. It's putting sex on a pedestal as kind of the arbiter of whether or not what they're doing is justified. And so if you are an Andrew Tate follower and you're seeing people calling you an incel and you just happen to have sex, then you can dismiss any criticism and say, well, I guess that stuff about me being a bad person is also not true because they called me an incel and I'm having sex. And
so you just got to make sure that you add all of the labels you need. Incel, men's right activist, MGTOWs are incels who fuck, basically. Just don't limit yourself to only one label.
Isn't that kind of an oxymoron? Incel that fucks?
That's why there's a different label. If you take a person who acts like women are the problem, and says they just want to be treated like assholes, and then basically, when an incel figures out how to manipulate people into fucking them, they become MGTOWs. That's the destination. And they're both in the men's rights activist category often. Anyway, the Venn diagrams overlapping once again. So yes, an incel that fucks wouldn't be an incel. They'd be a MGTOW. Seems easy enough to me.
Got it.
I'm open to anyone to correct me if I'm wrong.
I've never heard that term before, but it makes so much sense.
Do you know what a MGTOW is?
That sounds like a douchebag, yeah. I think
it stands for men going their own way, but it's basically the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. I wasn't sure which term you were saying you hadn't heard of. But yeah, it's
yeah, MGTOW. I've never heard of that. I've never heard that. Never heard that term before.
Yeah,
but it definitely describes, because I actually was curious about that, the whole incel thing and whatever, what happens when they actually like figure it out. When
if they start following the advice and manipulating people on their insecurities,
those are dudes that should not be getting married. About that,
or be allowed near women. Go ahead, Daniel.
Erin, if you haven't seen ContraPoints on YouTube, her video on incels, I think that's a really good watch if you have the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check it out.
So ContraPoints is great. Natalie's wonderful. All right, Daniel, unless you got anything else, we're going to move on.
That's it. Thanks. I'm a big fan of the show, Jimmy.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Erin, for agreeing with me. And welcome to the show. I hope to see you on in the future.
Thank you. And you're welcome.
Cool. See you, Daniel.
See ya.
Awesome. We got a couple more calls and then we will hit super chats and wrap this up. We might try and keep things a little bit tighter tonight. Generally, we're not going to go past the 2 hours. It's definitely not going to be a 6-hour show like Skeptalk was yesterday. But we got a couple more and then we will hit those super chats. Any super chat $5 or more, we will read out at the end. So if you have any additional questions, remember that shows like this, by supporting with super chats, it's why we can do shows like this. These little extra things that algorithmically, consistency is what sells, but we like shows like this that aren't consistent with new guests and stuff. So send a super chat if you appreciate special shows like this and if you want to support the line. The line. That's how somebody from the north, I don't know where, Minnesota would say it. The line. Blue in Colorado, my old stomping grounds. Blue, you are on the line.
Oh, hey, what's up?
What up? How you doing?
Pretty good today.
Cool.
So I guess, what's that?
I just said
Can
cool.
you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Go on.
Perfect. All right. So I guess my question today was something I just had bumping in my head from like a different, one of the calls I heard. But like when you take, a figure like Jordan Peterson, where he tends to, take these like pretty much almost identical to Christianity, like functionally ideas. And then he wraps them up in, but it's science, but I'm not a Christian, technically. Do you think there is, how do I phrase this, like any merit to that for, just for like a small group of people for like deconversion from Christianity? Like, do you think there's any merit to kind of taking the bad ideas, but bringing in one good one, I suppose?
On purpose? No.
What's that?
If I give me the question one more time, because I think I must misunderstand you.
Yeah, I phrased it terribly. I mean, so
it's okay.
If you're taking like the familiar parts of Christianity and you're changing one bit of it, is there any merit, you think, to that in deconversion, or is it just kind of like standing your ground in a different,
I guess I didn't misunderstand,
kind of bad place, maybe?
So are you referring to doing something that on purpose? Like, hey, I'm trying to help people deconstruct, so I'm going to give them 90% of Christianity and then change 10% of it to something better, and then we'll do that step again a year from now? Or are you just asking me if like, and Erin, are you just asking us if a religion, if you had two religions and one religion has one thing that's better than the other, but they're otherwise the same, is that better? Is that what's the functional purpose of this call? Sorry, Blue, I just don't get it.
Maybe, I wasn't certain about calling just because I wasn't really sure.
No. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm trying to get to where you are in your brain, for the record. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm just telling you that something is limiting me from what this question is. So which one of it was either of the two positions I gave you closer?
Yeah, so I was going to say it's more of the second one where you're saying if you take out the one thing, is that going to, and then repeatedly maybe do that with certain other things. But
on purpose or just incidentally?
Because incidentally, there we go. That would be how I was thinking of it.
Then that's just how the world is. There's thousands of versions of Christianity and they're very slightly different from each other. And some are really different and some are slightly different. And so the ones that are slightly better, I appreciate as slightly more, but I I wouldn't do. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Erin. It looks like you had a thought.
Do you mean like on the path to like deconstruction? So like, I know.
Yeah,
I've read a bunch of memoirs. Dave Warnock. Actually, I just finished his. Dan Barker. And a few people like that, or when you hear, particularly like clergy, one common thing that I've seen as they start to leave their faith or they start to lose their faith and kind of on the path to atheism is it's like one little brick at a time. You know, it's one thing that they let go of. Like in Dan Barker's case, you know, he was really, really set on this rigid religion. And as he started to travel around and he met other Christians and he's like, well, I'm supposed to hate these people. They're all supposed to go to hell, but I can't. So he sort of said, okay, well, this is okay then. They believe something slightly different. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring that into my fold because I don't want to hate these people. And that sort of, he kind of did that until he was an atheist. And I'm not sure that I went through that with my own self, but I see how that goes. Sometimes it actually might have been closer for me for like ghost hunting and like other supernatural stuff where it was like one little, you know, like orbs are bullshit. They're dust, right? And once you're like, okay, well, that's dust. Well, that's cool. But I still have all this other stuff over here. And, you know, and then slowly now all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, that's crap too. Oh, well, this isn't true. And now this isn't true. And so is that what you mean? That maybe that slow, you know?
Essentially that. It is a really, you know, I think essentially like Jordan Peterson's like a terrible person, obviously, but that people may be able to use it as a step, at least out of one space and into the next rung down, so to speak.
I see. So
not saying that they're not still hateful, but yeah.
Blue, the answer is it might work and it might not because people are different. And so like progressive Christianity, there are people who become progressive Christians and then become atheists. And then there are people who don't. There are people who they're not actually deconstructing away from related to truth. They're deconstructing away from harm, but they really still want to hold on to their God belief, being deluded or being in denial. Not only is it something that they're comfortable with, it's something they actually would like to maintain, the denial that their family is really dead or whatever else, because that's the product of religion. And so there are plenty of people who deconstruct to progressive Christianity and also stay there. And it really depends on what your motivation for deconstruction is. Is it truth or is it comfort? And if it's comfort, you probably aren't going to make it all the way to atheism and skepticism because those are still considered, especially by much of your community, will still be considered like shitty places to be. You're going to lose friends and family and stuff. So I think maybe the version of the question, and I'm sorry that I'm workshopping your question still 6 minutes later into your call, but would maybe the question you're wanting to ask be, Erin and Jimmy, are you glad that there is something to intercept people who are deconstructing because of comfort and that progressive Christianity does exist because otherwise, or progressive versions of things exist, otherwise people may just choose the two extremes or what they perceive as the two extremes. Basically, if they can't make themselves get all the way to atheism, they're going to stay in a more radicalized form of religion. Is that maybe, is that a good spot? Is that a good version of the question?
Yeah, I think I do get what you're saying is, yeah, it's still the same problem in a circular way.
But for the record, I would say I do prefer that progressive Christianity exists than not. I still collaborate with progressive Christians. And so that version of the question, I would say, yeah, I'm probably, for people who are only deconstructing for comfort, I'd rather they become a progressive Christian than just try and stay, it's kind of like with Mormonism. Mormonism, there are people who have tried to deconstruct from comfort where privately in their head, they're like, I still don't agree with this and this, but I'm going to go to church. I'm going to stay a Mormon, but I'm going to have this private version of it. And it's like, okay, that seems fine enough, right? Except for that they're also still giving 10% of their income to fight the causes the radicalized Mormons support. And because that's the cost of access to church, basically. You will be stigmatized and ostracized if you don't do that, if you lose your temple status, if you're not allowed to take the sacrament. Everybody could see that. So it's it's, even with Mormonism, when people want to deconstruct a little bit within Mormonism, they still end up having to participate at a radical end. And there's not really a version of Mormonism where it's like, well, go to this version of the Mormon church and you'll be fine and you won't have that stuff. Every attempt at that has basically failed for Mormonism. Christianity luckily does have that. Islam has that in some countries, but like Mormonism broadly, it fails to establish in other countries because it is of hostile mainstreamers that aren't okay with it. Same thing with Mormonism. Hostile mainstreamers are the ones who tend to shut out the attempts at creating a progressive version of Mormonism. I hope of all the answers, I hope whatever thing you were looking for commentary on, by answering 4 or 5 versions of the question, we were able to answer what you were looking for.
No, I think you framed it awesome. I really like the last take you had about, why they were doing it, because I never really considered that. So that was awesome. Thank you, Joey.
Do you know what's wild is I don't think I'd ever put it to words out loud too. So now you're probably going to hear me talk about that a ton because it's sort of something that was in the brain but not articulated until now. And I'm going to pretend that I'm super smart for noticing, even though I'm sure other people articulate this shit all the time. But let's pretend that I'm very
that's
insightful.
half the battle, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. Or Blue. Erin is my co-host. You're Blue. Proof you do not have to be smart to host a YouTube show. Welcome, everybody. Blue, anything else before we let you go? Any other questions for our wonderful, illustrious co-host today?
No, I think that did a good job. My dog's trying to kill me, so thank you guys.
Cool. Thanks, Blue.
Have a good one.
Sure. Any post-show notes there, Erin? Post-call notes, not show.
No, but part of me, well, I guess, I don't know. I was wondering if she was saying that because, and like I said, I don't know a lot about what Peterson says, but I was wondering if she was saying that, like, he, even though he's, a rotten person, apparently, if he could end up being a step to start deconstructing some of that Christianity, even though he's a jerk, which I don't know. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Blue was they, them, just so you know. I think your screen might be covering the pro because I know you put your little window over there.
It is. I moved it because it was actually in the middle of your face.
Oh, nice. Now that's the right place to put it. Leave the pronouns uncovered. Okay. Just cover my face. No one needs to see this. I don't know why I put myself on air. Everybody liked last night's show when I was just a disembodied voice, much, much more over Forrest and Erica. All right, we've got one more here, and then we will remember, send your super chats in. That is how the show ends. It's how we get to keep doing shows like these with amazing guests and stuff, and not just seeing Matt and I every Sunday having the same conversations with theists and atheists. These are the more fun ones. But in the meantime, we're talking to Avery in Australia. Pronouns they, them. G'day, Avery.
Howdy. Hi.
I was trying to annoy you a little with that. Also, that's the wrong name tag. I'll fix it. Go on.
So my question is unfortunately on Andrew Tate. I'll give you a little bit of context, I guess, as to why I'm so worried about kind of Tate's mindset and how much it will spread. So I'm on a spicy site, and on this particular site, I see a lot of women's profiles or femme profiles disliking the treatment that they get from men and masculine people. So they essentially somewhat hostilely react when either people aren't reading profiles or, they're just being outright rude and a little bit disgusting. And then you see those men kind of either show or convince themselves of an incel mindset. And it becomes kind of a vicious cycle. More femmes dislike it, push it away. More men decide to get into it. And having been a part of, not intentionally, I kind of got roped into it. I kind of fell into a cult with very much Tate's mindset. It kind of worries me that more people will end up like Tate overall, and the world is just going to be more divided. But I can also see that as someone who's experienced it and lived it, that I may be extra sensitive. So I'm kind of looking for a different perspective, if that makes sense.
Erin, do you have a different one? Because I do think the world's getting worse, so I don't have a different one.
So, as somebody who has a teenage boy that had gotten sucked into the internet, and his deal was, I hope he's not home and can't hear me. But he had what he calls a cringy Ben Shapiro phase, and started to fall down some of that right-wing incel-y type thinking. Maybe not incel. His was more like right-wing, some other stuff. He found some like racist content, some other stuff online. And so, we definitely had some conversations. Obviously, I'm trying to stop my son from going into that kind of thing. But I think what might maybe ease your mind a little bit, hopefully, obviously, I'm on the other side of the world. But I spent 20 years as an exotic dancer or stripper or whatever. And I've met a lot of dudes, a lot of dudes. And one thing that strikes me now that I've been online for the last couple of years, almost reluctantly, is, and the stuff that I see, you look at threads, you look at what's trending, you look at who's the loudest voices, the people that are screaming, the people that are getting attention, how algorithms feed, into the content that we're watching. And I do think that there's an uptick in radicalization of all sorts, including incel and this type of like anti-women misogynistic mentality. However, my experience with actual people in real life, actual men, is not that. And I kind of tend to feel like me as a performer in the sex industry, if I was going to have access to a whole lot of incels, like it would be me. And I simply didn't see that. I would say 90% of the men that I interacted with are looking for genuine relationships. Do not treat women like shit. Don't. In fact, the exact opposite. Most men's fantasies involve pleasing a woman. That's inconsistent with this Andrew Tate mentality of me, I'm looking for this subservient thing, subhuman type person. That is not consistent with my experience. Like I said, I would say 90 to 95% of men and their fantasies involve pleasuring, pleasing, being in a partnership with women. So I think that being online and social media algorithms, like I said, I think it really distorts the actual world when we go out, and interact with real human beings. Of course, there's a ton of shitheads, but I really think that the loudest ones are online, and those are the ones that are in our face. And I think that's I think it creates a distorted perspective of how people really act. Like I said, you may have a group of dudes in a setting where they're all together and they act one way, but you get that dude by himself and he's not that person. He's not that person. So you're going to find a certain amount of people that are going to be taken into that are going to fall into something horrible and just be rotten human beings. But I don't think the vast majority of men and really people in general are like that. And maybe I'm being too optimistic or whatever, but that's really my take on it is, he's a Christian, but this is what I always fall back on when things get really scary is, Mr. Rogers, is look for the people that are helping. And honestly, if you need to counteract the bad shit that you're seeing online, go look for the good stuff. You know what I'm saying? Go fall into the dogs and the puppies and the kittens and the animals for a little bit and try to get away from some of that pitfall that's online. Because it's in your face on purpose. It's in your face because you're watching it, and it's going to keep showing more of it to you because you're watching it.
I do agree with the idea that online makes everything seem like it's on fire all of the time. for sure. And the loudest voices and the most radical voices are online. I am not as optimistic as Erin. Just pure and simple. I see elements of what was just loud online seeping into real life now, and some of it's literally for content. You see the groups of people now who the new content that's doing very well are these assholes on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, where they're going into Target and tearing down pride signs and yelling at people who say stuff to them. But then when you extend into, like, I live in Texas, where I suddenly hear myself echo again. No, we're good. Okay. Where, they're putting into laws these things that years ago just seemed like radical assholes on Twitter. And they are, the fact that right now that they are in more places in the country successfully passing book bans. They are successfully prohibiting story time, drag story hours. They are successfully limiting the rights of trans people. In my state, they have set up a law where you can make money by reporting people for participating in or getting an abortion, aiding someone getting an abortion or actually getting the abortion. You can report parents who are allowing their children to transition in any way, whether it's just social transition or medically guided by doctors transition. You can report them. And you're seeing all of these things. Those things are successfully passing, and then across the country trying to get rid of, like, child marriage laws are failing.
That's actually having trouble here in California, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I volunteer with secular advocacy here in California, and that one boggles my mind.
Yeah.
In fact, if I have a chance to scream that to the world, I'm gonna be like, no, dude, like there's no defensing any of this at all. Like, we don't want kids to smoke. They can't be freaking getting married. No, I would counter with this is that how many times are you walking into the Target? Like, not on TikTok, but how many times are you walking into the Target? How many times are you walking into places and seeing somebody filming their TikTok video, ripping down shit? You're seeing it on TikTok. And if they're getting attention, they're going to keep doing it. The other thing is that there's an immense...
Let me respond to just that. I do want to say, specific to Target, precisely Target, sure, it's fewer and far between, though. If you go to the men's bathroom, I don't know what it's like at the women's, and you sit down in the stall, people are scraping in Nazi stuff and let's go Brandon into the walls and stuff. If I were to go into public, I just don't leave my house much. I'm not an incel, but we live similar lives. If anything, I feel like I was relieved to find out incels are too afraid to go to the strip club. But if I were to go into public in Texas, especially in Austin now, where people know they can go, it would not take me more than an hour or two to find somebody being disruptive somewhere and trying to bring those into the... I do think it's made it into public life, but it is still the minority, just that it's growing. Also, other things that are growing are like militia participation and where those radical people are going and training for the massacres.
We see that up in the hills where the meth is plentiful and the teeth get sparse. That absolutely happens here in California, totally, and it's an issue. But we're gonna go back to Mr. Rogers. Now, I just came from the American Atheists convention, where I tell you what, if you want to find the fucking people that are helping, there they are. And that's FFRF, and that's Americans United, and that's Dave Warnock in his new thing. And that is literally, these things aren't happening under the radar. People are seeing them happening, and they're pushing back. We're not just letting it happen. So we have laws that are getting passed that are fucked. We also have sanctuary laws that are happening for abortion and reproductive rights and trans rights. Those are laws that I advocate or help. I shouldn't say I really don't do shit. I sort of help other people do shit. But that's the thing. And there are so many people, nobody's going quietly here. And I still believe that these are the vocal minority. And yeah, you have the idiot who's carving in a swastika. I work in actually I have a part-time job. as a bookkeeper, actually. Who knew I was good at math?
Yeah.
But, it's a really tiny little town. And I watched people, especially during COVID, it's extremely red. I watched people throw tantrums in there. That's the only town I saw people throw tantrums in, this weird little red place. And in the same place where I saw these tantrums being thrown over masks and just people being dicks because they hate themselves or whatever the fuck. There's Nazi stickers, scan the QR code and become a fucking skinhead. But I still just don't think that's the majority. And I think that there's enough pushback. There are enough people that are out there that are fighting it, that are stopping it, that are protecting people that need to be protected. And I'm aware that I'm in blue California. But like I said, we have our own, a Proud Boy just ran for my kids' school district, with the book bans, he lost, thankfully. But really want to see Mama Bear come out. And I tell you what,
for the record,
5 feet and 5, find out, dude. But I
hope you're right and I'm wrong.
What's happening with the book bans? What happens? Bookstores are now offering all those damn books to kids for free. So, you know what I'm saying? Like there are the good people outnumber the bad. They do. It's how we've succeeded as a society and as a people. And I think sometimes we're in the middle of something that feels really bad and really scary. It gets hard to look for the helpers. It gets hard to look for the good people. So yeah, there's a bunch of bad shit right now. And I think this whole incel thing, they're going to realize at some point that shit doesn't work. They're miserable people. So they're either going to spend their lives being miserable, or at some point they're going to claw their way out of it. And they're going to come to the light and see that this is a shitty way to live their life. So
yeah,
I do,
I agree. It's not the majority.
That's all I'm saying.
I agree. It's not the majority yet.
We know the helpers, Jimmy. We know the helpers.
I'm trying to be one of the helpers. I hope I am, but I'm glad you think so. And I hope that's true. I wish I agreed with you. I really do. I wish I agree that it's not the majority. But I do think the trend is worse. And I think that we are heading toward a massive, terrible something before the correction comes. What that something is, I don't know yet, but history says it's wars of some type. But historically, I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it's really good. And it talks about the signs of an upcoming civil war. But the problem is it's not a perfect metaphor because they didn't have Twitter back then, right? So it's like some of the signs, but that whole thing about where, your neighborhood usually is filled with people that you get along with, and you don't really care what their beliefs are. And then when you start to see it like turning to neighbors hating neighbors and stuff, those are bad cultural signs that precede bad conflicts.
So here's one thing that I do know is happening in America. I don't know what's going on in Australia, although there's a lovely lady involved with recovering from Australia. Who's, every time I see Australia, I'm like, Jerry. Anyway, in schools right now, they are teaching critical thinking and they're teaching media literacy. So they're teaching kids right now what algorithms are and what algorithms do. They can do that outside of the political realm. So they can teach kids how the shit works that they're being fed. And they're basically teaching those critical thinking skills, which is what you need to get around the Andrew Tates and the Petersons and the whoever the fuck, right? Is they need to learn that they're being fed this stuff. And they're learning that, they're teaching that. That's part of a lot of curriculums now. So that, not to mention the Zoomers, my kid can vote now. You guys are welcome,
Make your kid vote.
I made a helper.
Yeah. Make them vote.
But that's what I'm saying is that they're starting to, teachers, adults that are raising the next generations are starting to recognize that kids need to, learn about how they can be manipulated online, because essentially our attention is commodities, right? It's all about algorithm. It's all about views and clicks and whatever. And that is getting taught in schools. So yeah, you're always going to lose a few, man. It's going to happen. But I
get it. I get what you're saying. And I'm very hopeful for we're seeing statistics that are emerging that for the first time ever, millennials are less conservative as they're getting older, whereas the trend before that has been the opposite. People as they age become more conservative. My generation is less conservative than our, and we're trending the other way. We're heading towards socialism, and then the generations that are following us are doing the same thing.
I was born in 78, so I am technically Gen X.
Yeah,
okay? I really wanted the Jennifer Aniston Friends cut, but my brothers and sisters are very firmly in Gen X, on the older end. All but one of them is very conservative. I personally have gotten, probably obviously, more progressive as I've gotten older. A lot of my friends have gone the same route. I have a friend who is a staunch conservative, and they ended up with a trans child, and that changed their tune really fucking fast.
Yeah.
So I think overall, when we look at just the way that humans are composed, empathy is a given. It is a feature, not a bug. It is something, empathy and compassion for other people is something that we need to survive as a species. And it's something that has carried us that far. So shit's really scary. I hate to agree with you, but I do think that we're probably gonna end up with some real bad shit that happens before things get better.
Yeah.
I don't want to think that. I think,
and I'm a public figure, so I'm a casualty when that goes on. Like that's. I
think there's some truth to that. I think that sometimes progress is messy, and I think that there could be some bad shit that happens before things get better. But people that are driven by empathy and compassion are still the majority. They have to be, otherwise we're done as a species. I mean, that's just it.
I think we'll go for hours if we just go through the nuances where we may agree or disagree. No. I'm the one cutting myself off.
Yesterday, Jimmy. I'm sorry. I was trying to.
No, we're good. Avery, I don't remember. I forgot you were there. Avery, are you? You got follow-ups? I feel like you've got one person who's telling you to, cheer up, things will get better, and one person saying like, nah.
Yeah, Jimmy.
We're probably fucked.
Yeah,
it's worth fighting for, though.
I guess I did. I'm a pessimistic person, so I wanted to call and kind of secretly just be kind of boast a little bit and say, hey, cheer up, stop being such a downer. But I think I get both views, and it's, for me at least, I think it's hard to be so optimistic that empathic people are part of the majority when you've kind of physically seen a lot of it, and not even just online. It's like the quote unquote cult that I was a part of, and seeing the leader of that one start monetizing his views and explain to other people how to indoctrinate to be a racist, be a misogynist, I can't say the P word online. I don't want to get you guys demonetized, but again, seeing that
podiatrist
kind of Kate mentality. Yeah, podiatrist. We'll go with that one.
Goddamn podiatrist. It's nothing okay about y'all.
But to see, like, he made enough money that to go from Australia, where he was born, raised, lived, all the way over to the UK, where he is now sitting pretty and avoiding the Australian police. He made enough money selling his views online, and it's so hard to be optimistic that, hey, he'll get taken down one day, or, hey, it's okay, no one's listening to him. Well, people are listening and paying, and it's just hard not to be a bit nihilistic and go, yep, world's screwed. Let's just hide away in a hobbit hole and pretend nothing else exists.
Well, I don't do that. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I would ask. So, like with the TikTok videos and the people that are ripping down pride flags and doing all that kind of stuff, and even Andrew Tate. When I see Andrew Tate, it's because somebody's bashing him. I don't see Andrew Tate in a context where people are like, "Oh my God, this guy's great." I don't see that. So part of what feeds the algorithm and the attention and the views and the clicks are the people that disagree with that guy. You know what I'm saying? So part of his money may have actually been made by the people that are opposing him, by throwing his content out even farther, by saying, look at this this guy. I'm hoping I didn't demonetize anything by saying the P word.
We have the word stripper in the title. I'm not worried.
Okay. All right, my bad.
I don't think we're monetized. Please send super chats. This episode's doomed. No, you're good.
But you know what I'm saying? Like that's one of the reasons why I stopped. Although sometimes I mess up and do it. But you know, people that we can't stand, we promote them too by disagreeing with them. So that's part of it. And the other thing, you know, like we were talking about with a guy in his marriage, is that our own experiences, they color our perceptions of the world. So if you have obviously been through some shit, dude, and you know, so you're going to view the world from that perspective. It's really, really hard to take a step back and look at like the big picture all the way around, as opposed to, as you know, to what you're looking like. You know what I'm saying? So I would say, you know, buck up, little camper. All is not lost. Look for the helpers.
Yeah.
I seriously,
and that's why I really do appreciate your views. Thank you.
I definitely don't want you to hide in a hole either, like you said. If we're going down, go down loud. And if you get, you know, if things get really bad, in the final moments, try and shit on an asshole's shoes. That's all you do.
Or, I mean, I would have done the opposite and been like, you know, have fun. Go to, you know, ride a roller coaster, jump out a plane or whatever the fuck. You know, go smoke some pot.
Yeah, you got to do both. Take care of you too.
Sometimes you don't have to, you know, fix everything or take the weight of the world. Sometimes you can sit and fucking read a book or take a walk or pet your dog or do whatever and just be happy for a minute. We don't always have to constantly be taking on the world's problems.
But at least vote or I hate you.
Well, of course.
Yeah, I always
for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Do what you can and then go enjoy your life.
Yeah. There are some minimums you got to do, but do enjoy your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will. I'll stop taking up your time. I know you guys want to get to super chats, but I really appreciate your your thoughts and your input, and you've given me a little bit of hope. So, thank you. And Jimmy, go fuck yourself.
Thanks,
royally.
Avery. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That was not a royal you. Specifically, you, Erin, gave Avery some hope because it wasn't coming from my end.
And don't get me wrong. I don't mean stop trying or don't do anything.
For sure.
I mean, do what you can, and then go, you know, enjoy some shit. So obviously, yeah, I do. You know, bare minimum is voting, but you know, not everybody's geared to be an activist either.
And if you can, before you die, shit on a fascist's shoes, but it's just a hard phrase to get out there. This is the portion of the show where we take questions via super chat. Erin, if at some point you have to leave, I know we're running right up against time. We can finish them without you if you need to go. But if you're willing to stick around for a bit more and take questions,
I can do a little more time.
Cool. And this episode almost certainly is doomed on the monetization end, again for the word stripper in the title, but also because of some of the topics we hit. So we extra appreciate when people do support the show via super chat, pays the bills, pays for the call-in system, all that sort of jazz. And sometimes it pays for me to eat. It's pretty nice. I'm a celebrated eater. I do enjoy food. Let me end that there. Good. We're good to go. All right. Moving over to our super chat screen and starting with $10 from Mastai31. Huzzah for anything that helps destroy purity culture. Salt and pepper were correct. Nice to hear your thoughts, Erin. Jimmy, go snuggle yourself. Well, that's entirely too wholesome for my taste. It's too much. It's too kind. Let's see. Next one here. $10 from a Margan. Erin, first time seeing you. I will be reading your books. Best of life to you.
Oh, thank you.
What order would you suggest people read your books in? Do you have a suggestion?
I don't. It really depends. My memoirs were my first book. That's basically the story of how and why I started dancing. I'm pretty blunt, not always kind. Yeah. Same thing with Think You Want to Be a Stripper. It's like a series of essays on different aspects of dancing. I talk about dealing with rejection. I talk about exploiting misogynists because, you know, if they think you're stupid and less than, then you play the role and you drain them dry. And then, see, I'm helping. Told you. I have a book of smut. I have, which is just like some erotic stories. They are mostly fiction. There's some that aren't fiction, but I'm not going to tell you what's not. And then there's Expose Yourself, which is about humanism, critical thinking, atheism for sure. Definitely my goal with that was to provide a little bit of hope and positivity while making a lot of snarky sex jokes. And then Stripper Noir is crime fiction. Absolutely has nothing to do with any of this. It's just a fun, gory, ridiculous read, basically the nightmare in my head. And then South of Heaven, my new one, it does actually kind of apply to this because, like I said before, it has to do with basically the hypocrisy of heaven and getting into heaven. But once again, there's lots of sex jokes and tons and tons of blasphemy, a little bit of gore. And, that's so it really just depends. There's something, I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, no, it's good. I am a little disappointed. I wasn't threatened once during today's show. Last night I was. There was a person who said, I'd like to remind you to remember, or something like that. I would like to, something, you should remember that we are live right now. Some sort of ominous threat that went nowhere. Because I called a guy a bitch. But in fairness, he was being a little bitch. Kept talking over the hosts and just being a ginormous asshole. $9.99 from, what do you think? How do you think you pronounce that? Migengo? This is a new patron, actually, too. I should probably learn how to say it. I don't know how to say it. What do you think?
Me, I wasn't even going to try. It just, I read a lot because I don't watch a lot of videos. I don't really watch a lot of TV or podcasts. So yeah. I'm super good at mispronouncing everything because most of the time when I learn new words, it's because I read them. So right. I'm already pronouncing them wrong in my head.
But like with a regular name, sometimes you can see a name and go, okay, I can kind of guess what part of the world this is from. And I have some, basic Latin understanding or Russian understanding. And so I can figure out that this is, Barkov or Romana or whatever. Usernames are just made up. They're just completely made up. So there's no way to guess usernames correctly. I've been vamping in the hopes that Magengo would in the chat give a pronunciation guide, but no such luck. So I guess we just move on. But Magengo, I don't know. Continue doing things like this. Great production quality tonight. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, everything looks tremendous. Tremendous. My people on this channel understand that production's like my whole thing. It's the thing I love the most. $15 from 3 a.m. Ryan. Another great show. Thank you. Earlier, there was something that this user had said in chat where the user had disagreed with us. And I think, I remember what it was. So I'll just address it quick because they weren't able to call in. I wasn't saying that Islam is, I said Islam is the worst religion in the world. It doesn't mean that it is impacting you in America the most. And by the way, I specifically mean mainstream. Let's just go with a religion with more than, we'll say, 10 million active participants. And Islam doesn't break apart in as many factions as there's only a few really factions of Islam as opposed to like Christianity. There's fucking as many versions of Christianity as there are Christians almost. But yeah, it's so specifically, I wasn't trying to say Islam is the worst. Therefore, Christianity isn't oppressing people in the U.S. In the U.S., you are more likely to be affected by radical Christianity than Islam because generally Muslims are going to vote progressive even though it doesn't serve a lot of their religious beliefs because it protects them more as an individual. So, yeah, I don't just thought I'd clear that up. That would be the second time somebody was like, y'all were wrong about this. And then they said something we agreed with because that happened in the call earlier. Anyway, another one from Magengo who, okay, wait, it's made up deaf Latin influence. God dang, mega ingo. That is not using your guide, that's not Latin. Latin would be mehengo. Mehengo would be Latin, I think. Anyway, whatever. We're going to call you M. M also said, look for the people that are helping. I love that. That's why I'm here at the line. What? Yeah, because of the insight of people who don't work here at the line that way excels beyond what we're capable of. This is why we bring in these wonderful people and why we rely on super chats at the ends of shows like this to support the show. So thank you so much. It helps us to be able to keep doing things like this. Seth Andrews on next week, by the way, everybody. That was the rescheduled show we were supposed to do, and then the hacking happened. The hacking incident. 1999 from Daniel. Thanks again for taking my call. Erin, I wish there were more parents who had the awareness to recognize the signs that their kid was going down the alt-right pipeline. Major props for that. Jimmy, go fuck yourself. Any thoughts there?
Oh, yeah. No, the first sign was a quote from the Federalist. And I was like, holy shit. And my first thought was, where'd you get that from? And he goes, well, it's from a newspaper. Yeah, is it?
Kind of. Like in the loosest possible sense.
We're gonna sit down and we're gonna have some discussions. No, early on, I come from a very conservative Republican family, and like I said when I was trying to explain to you what my religious background was, it's Orange County, California, as opposed to Florida, which I think is way worse. Who wants to live in Florida? But I grew up with, our God was Reagan, or maybe he was our prophet. Our God was money and consumerism and capitalism. And that's what my religion was, basically. Yeah. So Rush Limbaugh basically ruined Christmas, as far as I'm concerned. It took him a minute to get there. But my son was gifted by a family member a kids book written by Rush Limbaugh. And I, speaking of banning books also, I was very concerned. And I was like, I don't think I really want to give this book to my son, who's 10, who loves reading. And it was a, what's it called? Rush Revere. It was on like patriotism and stuff. So I was really concerned about like the twisting of the history and all that kind of stuff. And I was convinced to not ban that book and let him have it. And what it did was it made me very, very aware and ready to discuss anything that he needed to discuss out of it. Now, it turns out a few years later, especially because he had gone back to that person and said, oh, I love the book, and ended up getting the rest of the series. But we were going through his room and kind of getting rid of stuff. And we found these books looking for stuff to donate. And I said, do you want to donate those? And he goes, Mom, these are so bad. He's like, I read like one chapter. And this was an accomplished reader. My son was just a high level reader from very, very young. And he was like, this is worse. He goes, this is so terrible. And we talked about it and talked about some of the things. So my instinct to take that book away from him was wrong. And it was good to let him read it, because what it did was essentially inoculate him to, when he started to see some of that stuff online, he was free to talk about it. I didn't take anything away from him. I did not censor anything. What I did was I made myself available to discuss and talk about why some of the ideas he had run across, both then and when he was a teenager, were wrong, and was able to steer him towards critical thinking, much like we were talking about what is happening in schools right now with media literacy and teaching about how algorithms and all that kind of stuff work. So, yeah. Not a fan of banning books, even by Rush Limbaugh, which went into the recycle bin, by the way.
Sure.
We did not donate those books.
Maybe the fire bin. There's something about that, as a parent, what a challenge it must be to not just tell, like, especially when you're trying to raise your child as a skeptic. It's not enough to say, like, you brought a Rush Limbaugh book, that book's wrong. It's and not even just being able to say, like, this book is wrong in this spot and this fact is wrong, but actually being able to not just explain what's wrong, but why it sounds right, why it, like, what mechanisms they're using, what propaganda tactics they're using to make it sound and feel right, why they're trying to aim at your feelings as opposed to what actually is correct. And it's definitely a tough challenge, and I commend anybody who can pull it off. It's definitely well done, I guess is my way of complimenting you and identifying the challenge. I don't have any kids yet. $5 from RC Dasheen, maybe. Hey, Jimmy, you're going to hate this, but I appreciate the space you've created for people who want these kinds of conversations. Do good work, sir. I don't mind compliments like that. I mean, it does have my name in it, but to say that you appreciate the product of 80-hour weeks for the last 3 years, that I can get on board with. It's just when people compliment me directly. I'm sure you've caught on, Erin, that instead of people telling me they love me, they say, go fuck yourself. Okay. It's a meme on this. It's a term of affection on this channel. And
I was picking that up. Yeah.
Last one, unless more come in. This is from Tabathug. And Tabathug, we're going to have to talk about this one. I love you and go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Sorry, I couldn't afford $5. But you sent $4.20. Tabathug, please email me, dearmratheist@gmail.com. I'll be able to easily verify that it's actually you from YouTube. I'm going to send you this back. Don't send your last, people, don't super chat if it's not excess income that you can just, I'm terrified by the prospect that this might be your last $5, for example. So please reach out, because I am more than chuffed to have people just in the audience. It is very much a part of our business model to take super chats and our ability to stay alive and afloat and everything. It's super chats and Patreon, but it's all built in a way where we only need to take those from the people who actually can, it has the excess disposable income. So while on the one hand, I'm not going to tell you if this is the thing you most wanted to do with your $4.20, I'm not going to try and take that away from you. But at the same time, I'm also going to try and run my company. I'm a socialist. I pay my employees on profit share, right? I'm not going to try and take somebody's last $5 for a digital good that returns them no value besides saying out loud their name. So please email me. I'd like to give you your $5 back, because it would feel weird to keep this one, is mostly what I'm saying. We do have another one though after that. Sorry, I realized too, now spending that much time on it. But I'm also not trying to single you out or anything. It's just, just makes me feel weird when somebody's like, don't ever give me your last dollars. Pounds, is that what that is? Or is that, that's pounds, not euros. £5 from Vincent King. Hey, great episodes. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. May is National Masturbation Month. I assume you meant masturbation. But that because you had to spell it funny so that Super Chat would allow you to send it, you then forgot the R. However, if you are a person who tubes things, this may be your month to do so in mass. I don't know for sure. I don't want to eliminate the possibility that it's actually masturbation month. But anyway, first, and then go celebrate. Is there a National Masturbation Month?
There is actually, and I think it might be this month, in which case I did write a book for that. It's called Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners.
It'll help you out. Personally, I don't need someone to tell me which month to masturbate or which month to appreciate it. I'm fine. I can handle that on my own.
Look for any excuse to celebrate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. There's also, there's a few too many, what's the phrase? There's too many awareness months because there's not enough months. Do you know what I mean? When I find out where it's like, oh, this month is March, which is national awareness of, I think March is women. I think it's also there's 3 different ethnic groups. Irish for sure, because they got St. Patrick's Day. And then there's actual Irish appreciation. And then I want to say, I think it's 2 white ones and then 1 non-white. Anyway, there's too many. I'm only going to remember the main ones. It's Black History Month in February, Women's History Month in March. Pride is June. That's it.
May is actually International Masturbation Month. And National Masturbation Day is actually May 28th. So maybe... You know what I'm saying? Prepare for that.
I don't need to prepare.
Start training now, I guess. Like a marathon. Plan to take a day off work.
Is there a competition? I'd like to, if there's a prize, I'd like to enter whatever competition happens on Masturbation Day.
Well, I'll send you a copy of my book for free then. Just, you know what I'm saying, to support
I have your
effort.
books. I have them on Audible because lately I'm listening to books, but
Oh,
I
the dirty
appreciate the
one?
thoughts. I don't know. I whatever it said was by you.
You'll know. It comes
I
with
got 'em.
it comes with a PDF.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's, those go in together. AAPI Heritage Month. I don't know what that is. I probably should. And maybe I even do.
Oh, it's Asian Pacific Islander month, I believe.
Okay.
And then I actually think it's Celiac Awareness Month, celiac disease, which is actually in my family. So
that's not in here. That's not on the one I have. I'm not saying you're wrong. Oh, wait. I have to get to the longer. I found it.
From the Celiac Foundation. Yes, it is Celiac Awareness Month.
Yeah. Okay. So it's also Jewish American Heritage Month. Then this week is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. And there's also a National Nurses Week this month, a Deaf Awareness Week, Teacher Appreciation Week, World Bee Day and Harvey Milk Day. And then here are ALS Awareness Month, American Stroke Month, Apraxia Awareness Month, Be Kind to Animals Month. That should just be a year round.
Do that all the time, right?
What's that?
I said that should just be all the time. We said the same thing at the same time. Yeah.
Celiac, as you said, brain cancer awareness, cystic fibrosis awareness, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome awareness, fibromyalgia awareness, gardening for wild. I'm too aware.
I'm aware. I'm done.
I'm too aware. I'm aware of too many things. You're ruining my life. Can you imagine being aware of these all month long? You'd just be depressed all the time.
I knew last year I wrote a piece on the International Masturbation Month or Day, one of the two. And so that was why that rung a bell for me. But then I also get emails from Celiac Foundation. And so I sort of knew that one just because that happens to be in my realm. I also knew the Asian one, and I'm not sure where I saw that. Somewhere.
I need a Don't Perceive Me Awareness Month. Somewhat ironic. I want you to be aware that I'd like to not be perceived this month. Okay, anyway, continuing on. $20 from Masai31 to cover Tabithug's desire to support Shove It Where the Sun Don't Shine, Jimmy. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. And Ben T says, great show, Jimmy and Erin, from an Austin skeptic. Go fuck yourself also. Well, we have more Austin events coming up. I just don't know when or where, but that'll be happening. So you're welcome to come out to some of our local group stuff. We've got Man Hathaway. Thanks for taking my call. Did you hear about the kidnapping in the park? He woke up. It's a pun. Yeah. You don't like puns?
It just took me a minute to get it.
I like a pun. I think puns should be called POWs, P-O-Ws, but it's pronounced POWs because a pun is a play on words. Yeah. I think that's a way better word for it. Why do we go with pun? We need a 3-letter word for a play on words. And no one said POW? Not one person said, let's acronym this bitch? Like fucking Jesus. Tamari Tammy Tam says, having been all three, I firmly believe Mormonism, Islam, and evangelical Christianity are equally harmful. Praise to the man, Jimmy. Go fuck yourself. There's a very interesting nuanced discussion one can have about, because you have to basically line up where it is. So there is no real version of moderate Mormonism. You're either in or you're out. Now, privately, you might feel better or worse, but it's a mandated 10%. And that's what really determines whether you're in. 10% of your income. A lot of Mormons believe that's supposed to be before tax. And some wards will tell you it is supposed to be before tax. But yeah, it's, I don't know. Anyway, I disagree. Mormonism is bad, and it's one of the worst forms of Christianity if you would consider it a part of it. Evangelical Christianity is bad. Though there are more people related to the moderate Christianity that are evangelical Christians than so if you just say moderate Christianity, including evangelicals, compared to what is defined moderate Islam, And I think you will find, compared to Christianity, moderate Islam is more extreme than moderate Christianity. And they're, as we've been talking about a little bit lately with all the debates we've been having, their apologetics are way worse, like really bad. They're just, sperm comes from the spine, people. Again, we're talking about the religion, and we're separating it out from the individuals. Yes, I did say that Errol's Downloads month is, this is the awareness month. See, I killed Earl, you weren't aware. Light Halcyon 420 of this to cover Tabithug 92. Y'all are so generous and wonderful. Definitely email me Tabithug. Let's send that back to you. I don't feel comfortable having it. I think that's it. This was your first time on the line? Did you like it? Did you enjoy doing calls?
I did. I was bracing myself for an argument, and I gotta say, I'm not really.
I'm bummed.
I'm relieved and disappointed at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody that really is. I'll ever like super geared up to argue, but when I get passionate about something, I sort of can't help myself. So no, it was a good time. I liked hearing from the people that called in, and awesome to meet you sort of finally. Like I said, you're on my list of people to meet in real life.
You just got to come to one of our conventions, maybe as a speaker.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly we could talk about it. Texas is a lot easier to get than the other side of the country. I got to say, I was watching all the stuff on SatanCon, and I'm thinking that looks like a hell of a lot of fun. So,
One thing I like about living here is, weirdly, there's something about Austin. I don't know if it's trade routes or what, but Austin's airport is one of the, almost everywhere in the U.S. has pretty, on most days of the month, you can find a round trip to Austin somewhere between $80 and $200 by plane. Yeah, there's something about this airport specifically. I have friends who will travel from Dallas or Houston and fly out of Austin, even though that's an extra 3-hour drive, because they'll save $400 to $500. Austin's nice that way. When there's specific events happening, South by Southwest and stuff, obviously that changes. But yeah, there's something great about Austin's very easy to travel to and from. And it doesn't suck like the rest of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I like San Antonio. I went there for FFRF last year, and I had a good time there. Yeah. So, but like I said, I put on my blinders sometimes when I've reached my limit.
No, San Antonio's great though too. The cities in Texas are great. And a lot of Texas is great. Austin's the best, but a lot of Texas is great. Houston has the worst drivers in maybe America, but the people are legitimately, it's filled with amazing people, but it's so large and there are so many people. Yeah. There's so many rural communities that ruin
I stayed at a hotel right next to the Alamo, and I like historical stuff. So my only disappointment was the fact that all the touristy stuff was all built around this historic place, and I'm trying to find where Ozzy peed because I'm like, oh, that's really exciting. And although I was warned against trying to pee in the same spot, they're like, you will get arrested. I was like, I've never been arrested. I could afford one, right? I mean, come on. I'll be okay. I spent the majority of the time walking on the River Rock, honestly, by myself. And that was the best thing ever. It was that's tend to what I do when I go to different cities, is I just start walking.
February through April is also the best weather I've experienced anywhere, but it doesn't stay that way. You have California where it's, I would say California, March was the best, but I'd say a lot of California weather is similar to our February, and you get that through a lot of the year. Maybe not where you are, but the parts of California
so California's real big.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
You're thinking the down south California. Up here we have seasons. I'm up in Northern California. So we have seasons, we have lots of rednecks, and we have Well, sometimes I tell you what, Wranglers are a deal breaker for me. If I'm going to be talking to
a progressive redneck's kind of hot to me. I don't know what it is, but if someone's got that twang and they're like, I spent the morning wrestling my cattle. Anyway, I'm headed down to the courthouse because I'm going to testify on behalf of
Yes, you know what? I would make an exception in that case, but we just had one of the worst winters ever. And then in the summer here, it'll get over 110. I have a pool actually pretty much because of that. But winters are funky. And yeah, we have full on seasons, but you go down like where I grew up in Orange County, it's like, it's 70, 80 degrees all the time, pretty much. And then it rains and everybody freaks out, but everybody's totally chill when there's an earthquake. We're like, we know what to do with this. When water starts falling from the sky, everybody fucking like loses their shit.
Yeah, that's like drivers in Colorado. They're like, I don't care if there's a blizzard. I'm going to, brunch. But then rain drops and they're like, so what if we just turned all of the highways into parking lots? What if no one moved for a few hours? That's Colorado. And then Houston, no one knows how to drive in Houston. I don't know what it is. If you're watching right now from Houston, you don't know how to drive. That's what I'm telling you. When I went to Houston, there were multiple exits closed because firefighters putting out car fires from accidents. Not one, I think it was 3, but maybe it was 2, and now I'm exaggerating it to make the story, but I don't know. But there was at least 2. It might have been 3. They have this ridiculous highway system that's impossible to maneuver. It goes up and down, but it's confusing as all hell. And so it's not surprising. But yeah, I've never before seen more than one fire truck putting out fires on the highway. And this day that I went, I saw 3 trying to find my exit. It was wild. Anyway, remind people one more time where to find you, and then let's just go. It'll be done. It'll be over.
ErinLewis.com has links to all my books. Everything is on Audible with the exception of South of Heaven. I believe we just picked a narrator. And you can get signed copies and actually pictures there. There's a link. There's my blog, which will have different interviews, links to articles and all that stuff there. I'm also on Twitter, TikTok, because I was talking to it.
Yeah,
I know. Trust me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's so great you're on TikTok." I'm like, "It's really not. I hate it."
Yeah,
but I'm doing it. I'm working on it, and sometimes it's kind of fun. I feel like a goofball making videos. I do have a YouTube channel. I don't post a lot there. Facebook and Instagram, and I think I already said Twitter. Oh, and Goodreads. Come on, where's my nerds? Find me on Goodreads.
Yeah, you nerds.
Yeah. But yeah, ErinLewis.com has pretty much has a hub to everything to be able to find me. And obviously I'm on Amazon and Audible and all that stuff.
Well, I was about to run the credits, but they're broken. I see here that they're offline. So everybody pretend that a list of patrons right now, I'll have it fixed by next show. A list of patrons are scrolling over this, the thing. This song would be playing as it goes. Oh, you can't even hear that. Now we hear it. Wrong one. What the fucking... The whole thing's just breaking. It's over. Jimmy Snow is fired. This song was supposed to be playing as the credits were going. And then at some point, it would fade to black with this and the show would end. It would do this kind of thing. Oh, that's not even... It would do this kind of thing. Everything just broke. The fuck is this nonsense? All right, goodbye.